This is VOA Africa.
Good evening, I'm Esther Gidhuyu. It's Friday, September 27th. This is Africa 54. The head of the Zimbabwe's Doctors Association leaves the country for urgent medical treatment after being held in captivity. A United States intelligence chief tells lawmakers he acted lawfully when blocking a whistleblower complaint that launched the Trump impeachment inquiry. And meet Dillon Jinji, the king of Marabenta, Zimbabwe's iconic music and dance style. The head of Zimbabwe's Doctors Association has bolted the country for urgent medical treatment in South Africa after being held captivity, during which his medical team says he was poisoned. Police tried to block his departure, even though he had a court order allowing him to leave. Columbus Mavunga has more from Harare.
Dr. Peter Gabriel Magombe's medical and legal team spirited him out of this medical facility, where he had been receiving treatment for the past week following his release from captivity. Magombe, acting head of the Zimbabwe Hospital Doctors Association, says he was kidnapped by security forces, an accusation the government denies. His father, who has been staying with him at the hospital, said he is relieved his son is out of the country.
I'm very happy in that one. I'm very happy for that step taken by the medical practitioners. I'm very happy in that one. There are areas whereby, you know, when you have your son or your daughter, part of your family, you really know, I mean, the activities of your person. Now that there are areas whereby I see that Peter does not his character as I know him. There's some areas whereby I feel he needs further medication.
He added that his son's medical team believes Magombe developed a liver problem from being poisoned while in captivity. Zimbabwe's government says police tried to block Magombe's departure so they could question him about his kidnapping.
The police is keen to apprehend the alleged abductors so as to bring them to justice and protect the public. They therefore sought the court's assistance in delaying Dr. Magombe's departure to South Africa before giving the vital leads they need to advance their investigation.
Even though Magombe has left Zimbabwe, his association says doctors are not calling off their 3-week-old strike for higher pay. Magombe's supporters say the outspoken doctor was abducted for calling the strike, which began September 3rd. Columbus Mavunga for VOA News, Harare.
The dispute between Robert Mugabe's family and the government on where Zimbabwe's longtime ruler will be buried has been settled. Mugabe will be laid to rest in his home district and not at a national shrine. The government relented Thursday to the family's desire for a private burial 3 weeks after his death. Mugabe, who ruled Zimbabwe for 37 years from independence in 1980, died in a Singapore hospital on September 6th at 95. President Emerson Mnangagwa had initially pushed for Mugabe to be buried at the National Heroes Acre Monument. An occasion political analysts and ZANU-PF sources say Mnangagwa wanted to use to display a public reconciliation with Mugabe's admirers. But the Information Ministry said in a statement Thursday that the government was cooperating with Mugabe's family, who wanted him buried in Zwimba district west of Harare. In breaking news first reported on VOA, sources told VOA Pentagon correspondent Carla Burb that another U.S. airstrike targeted Islamic State fighters in Libya Thursday. U.S. Africa Command later confirmed the strike killed 17 terrorists. It is the third U.S. strike this month against the terror group in the southwestern Libyan town of Mulzouk. As we reported yesterday, an airstrike earlier this week killed 11 Islamic State militants, and another last week killed 8, according to U.S. Africa Command. Thursday evening, a high-level meeting on Libya was hosted by foreign ministers of Italy and France. Joining me live from the United Nations with more on Libya discussions is VOA UN correspondent Margaret Bishia. Hello, Margaret.
Hi, Esther.
All right, bring us up to speed on what happened last night.
So the UN has been very concerned about the downward spiral that Libya has been on since April, when General Haftar moved his forces on Tripoli, and the country has been in a real cycle of violence since then. So the Italians and the French, along with the Secretary General and other interested countries, are really trying to push the country back on track, because in April it was very close to coming to political talks to resolve the problems in the country. So they're trying to push for a nationwide ceasefire and then get an international conference together. And then the conference would put pressure and support on the Libyan parties so that they would come back to intra-Libyan talks along with the AU to try and get the country back on track. Because Libya is so vital, the security and stability of Libya is so vital, not just for Libyans, but for all of North Africa, for the Sahel, and for Europe, because so many migrants are leaving the continent and trying to cross the Mediterranean. So it's an issue of real concern for the United Nations right now.
Now, Margaret, is there any positive news this week coming out of Africa from the UN?
Yeah, I would say Sudan has really become a good positive story here this week. The Prime Minister, Hamdok, is here. The Foreign Minister is with him. She's a woman. They are appearing, actually right now there's a meeting starting on the transition, about the transition in Sudan, a meeting starting here. Secretary General is going to be at it. He's expected to repeat his calls for lifting of economic sanctions on Sudan and for removing Sudan from the state sponsor of terror list. And we've seen Sudan sign an agreement with the UN Office of Human Rights this week so that they may open offices in Sudan. That's a major development for a country that was ruled by someone who's been accused of being a war criminal for the past 30 or so years. So a big leap forward. They want to build on that. They want to make sure human rights are part of this transition. And the Prime Minister actually even took part in a press freedom event this week here. And today he's going to give a press conference, which I don't recall in the many years that I've been here, a Sudanese senior official giving a press conference. So I think all really positive signs that Sudan is moving in the right direction, but the UN really wants to make sure that these gains are permanent.
Right, Margaret, thank you so much. That's VOA's Margaret Bishia reporting live from the United Nations. Now, an extremely disturbing situation has surfaced in West Africa. Nigerian police say more than 300 men and boys, some as young as 5 years old, and many in chains and bearing scars from beatings, were rescued Thursday in a raid on a building that purported to be an Islamic school in northern Nigeria. Most of the freed captives seen by a Reuters reporter in the city of Kaduna were children. Some shuffled with their ankles shackled and others were chained to prevent escape. Some of the children came from neighboring countries, Burkina Faso, Mali, and Ghana. The children had been left by their parents, according to local media reports. A Kaduna police spokesman says 7 people who say they were teachers at the school are now in custody. Now, the president of Egypt told supporters Friday not to worry about calls for further protests against his rule as security forces tightened controls in the center of the capital and closed off entrances to Tahrir Square. Protests erupted on September 20th in Cairo and other cities following online calls for demonstrations against alleged corruption by President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi and the military. Al-Sisi, who was in New York attending the United Nations General Assembly, returned to Cairo on Friday, where he was greeted by religious dignitaries and a crowd of supporters. Al-Sisi also appeared to repeat his earlier rejection of allegations of corruption posted online by Muhammad Ali, a former contractor and actor, in the run-up to the protests.
This is an image being painted, as was done before, comprised of lies and defamation and some media working to present an image that isn't true. We are really strong. The country is really strong. Why? Because of God and because of you. So don't worry about anything. Don't worry about anything. Don't worry about anything.
Since last weekend's protests, authorities have carried out a campaign of mass arrests. Human rights monitors say at least 1,900 people have been detained. Now, Zambian President Edgar Lungu says corruption in his country is being politicized and that he is working to improve the country's legal framework. Here is part 2 of a conversation the president had with VOA's Peter Clotty in New York.
So, Mr. President, one of the promises you made to Zambians is to root out corruption. How would you rate yourself in the fight against graft in the Republic of Zambia?
Well, you rate me after, because for Zambia, unfortunately, the fight against corruption has been politicized. It's become a special vehicle for those who seek political office to make their friends look very ugly. I have given latitude to the institutions mandated by law to investigate, prosecute, and bring to an end or reduce corruption. I have not tampered with them. I have not called them to my office to say, can you target that man because he's a threat to my political life and so on. I think on that score, I have given them space. And I've lobbied for funding for them from cooperating partners. I've lobbied, they've been given training programs. And I think apart from that, if you give me evidence that this one has gone astray, he's on the wrong side of the law, I'll work on him. But I can give you examples of people who have used it in the past to say, oh, XY is corrupt, can you deal with him? And I want to cite one example of a minister who I relieved of his appointment because he was ready to be corrupt. What happened is they gave me the information, the Financial Intelligence Center gave me the information, and I think other wings of government gave me information that XY, your minister, is guilty of corrupt practices. I said, oh, well, probe him. And that's what I'm supposed to do. And they probed this guy. And along the way, the guy said, you can't probe me, I'm a minister. And he kicked these guys in their backs. They came crying. You know, they said, look, that minister is bullying us. In short, he's not cooperating. I relieved that minister. And when I relieved the appointment of that minister, he became a crusader, alleging corruption against his colleagues. Why? Because the institution which was supposed to take him to court and prove the case did not do so. And the politicians also ganged up with this minister, former minister, and said, no, the government is corrupt. So you see, I think that by giving ground and space without interfering with the institutions mandated to investigate corruption, I've done very well. And I've challenged people that if the institutions are not working because of the legal framework being inadequate, let me know how we can follow through so that we give them the power and the teeth. That's what you do. Because I cannot be president and be responsible for investigating and prosecuting. I can't, because that's not what the law says.
That was Zambian President Edgar Lungu speaking with VOA's Peter Clotty in New York. Rwanda is now home to 66 asylum seekers that were being held in a Libyan detention center. It is the first of a group of 500 to be sent there under an August agreement with the United Nations to help resettle people detained while trying to reach Europe. The UN Refugee Agency says members of the group were from Sudan, Somalia, and Eritrea. They have been given asylum seeker status while the agency determines whether they are refugees. UNHCR says it will spend $10 million this year on flying the refugees from Libya to Rwanda and building facilities that will provide basic aid services. We're excited to hear what you think about Africa 54. Join the discussion on Facebook. The address is Africa 54. We're also streaming our broadcast live on Facebook. Please watch and share our show with your friends. Also, check out our headlines 24/7 on voaafrica.com. Still to come, the king of the iconic music and dance of Mozambique will be back.
I am Sheikh Sali, host and senior editor of VOA's international call-in talk show, Straight Talk Africa.
Today we'll examine the tobacco industry.
We pretty much touch on anything that you can think of. Politics, health issues, human rights issues, you name it, we talk about it. The issues that we discuss are pertinent to most people on the African continent. A very, very rare and unique opportunity to interact with their leaders.
The lyrics could be French,
English,
Portuguese,
Bantu,
Arabic.
It is the beat.
The African beat that counts.
The beat does all the translations.
It cuts across all languages and gives us the understanding that this is the African beat.
It is so distinct
and adhesive.
It binds us together.
African beat on the Voice of America. For more information, visit our website at www.voanews.com/AfricanBeat.
I'm Clara Frank, and here's what's trending. In South Korea, a handful of young North Korean refugees have launched YouTube channels to offer a rare glimpse into everyday life in the North. They talk about things like what food North Koreans eat and what swear words they use. Their broadcasts contrast with the mainstream media reports that focus heavily on North Korea's nuclear program and its internal politics. About 32,000 North Koreans have fled to the South over the past 2 decades to avoid poverty and political repression. Next up, Hollywood celebrated the 50th anniversary of the Beatles' Abbey Road album with a temporary zebra crosswalk. During the event, fans were able to recreate their own Abbey Road album cover and snagged exclusive Beatles commemorative giveaways. The Abbey Road album was released on September 26, 1969, and was the last one the group recorded together as a band. A special anniversary edition of the album has been released with new mixes and unreleased session recordings and demos. And finally, the Star Wars Triple Force Friday Global Reveal livestream just happened, and with it came a first look at a ton of new products and toys inspired by Star Wars The Rise of Skywalker, The Mandalorian, and Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order. The merch includes new droids, figurines, and of course lightsabers. Triple Force Friday will be marked globally on October 4th, 2019. And that's what's trending today.
The impeachment inquiry into U.S. President Donald Trump's dealings with the Ukrainian president captivated America on Thursday, as Acting Director of National Intelligence Joseph Maguire told lawmakers he acted lawfully when he initially blocked the release of a whistleblower report now at the center of the probe. VOA's Catherine Gibson has more from Capitol Hill.
New questions for President Trump as the American public gets the first look at the whistleblower complaint outlining a number of concerns about Trump's call with Zelensky, including allegations White House officials covered up the details.
The complaint states that the White House tried to lock down all records of the call, especially the word-for-word transcript. That gave the whistleblower reason to believe that they, the White House, understood the gravity of what transpired in that call.
House Democrats had threatened to take the nation's top intelligence official to court to obtain the complaint.
By law, the whistleblower complaint, which brought this gross misconduct to light, should have been presented to this committee weeks ago, and by you, Mr. Director, under the clear letter of the law. And yet it wasn't.
Maguire said he had respected the legal rights of the presidency in an unprecedented situation.
And we're advised that much of the information in the complaint was, in fact, subject to executive privilege, a privilege that I do not have the authority to waive.
Maguire acknowledged the whistleblower was credible and right to come forward, but refused to address concerns Trump meddled with the process.
Did you ever speak to the president about this complaint?
My conversations with the president, because I'm the director of national intelligence, are privileged, and it would be inappropriate for me, because it would destroy my relationship with the president in intelligence matters, to divulge any of my conversations with the President of the United States.
Trump dismissed the complaint as a political gambit.
The Democrats are going to lose the election. They know it. That's why they're doing it.
A view supported by congressional Republicans.
What in this case rises to impeachment? This is a president of the United States that had a conversation with a leader in another country. Never before has a president had to put forth their conversation. The reason why he had to put forth his conversation.
But the complaint was enough to push House Democrats into a formal impeachment inquiry.
This whistleblower has given us a roadmap for our investigation.
Investigations that could end with a vote on the House floor on articles of impeachment.
There are some in our caucus who think, let's just have an impeachment. No, we have to have an inquiry to further establish the facts. There is no rush to judgment, and in some ways we are a jury.
Many House Democrats saying they want to see that vote by the end of this year, before the 2020 presidential election gets fully underway next February. Catherine Gibson, VOA News, Capitol Hill.
Angolan Foreign Minister Manuel Domingo Augusto says he is optimistic about bilateral meetings aimed to, among other things, attract investors as well as strengthen relations between Rwanda and Washington. Augusto spoke with VOA correspondent Peter Claudy in New York.
Angola has been affected by the climate change, and this year's UN General Assembly focuses on climate change. So what role is Angola playing in actualizing or trying to establish this in Angola and the rest of Africa?
Yeah, we are, first of all, let's say that this very moment that we are talking, we are experiencing one of these consequences of climate change. There is a drought, a severe drought in the south of Angola, south and southeast, and we are trying to deal with this. As you say, fortunately, Africa has been spared of all this phenomenon, but we have signs that this phenomenon can get close if we don't take the measure. So that's why Angola, as most, if not all, of African countries, we join those of them that are absolutely right that we must act and not talk about climate change.
Angola has had very good relations with the U.S. so far. What is the next step in terms of improving relations further? How do you want to take the next step?
Yes, we are looking forward to strengthen our bilateral relation with the United States of America, and we want to be part also of the new American policy for Africa, especially on the implementation on the program launched by President Trump called Prosper Africa. We are a strategic partner of the U.S. in Africa. We have common interests, namely in the oil production, but we want to go beyond this, the oil sector cooperation. We think that the U.S. can be fundamental for our diversification of economy policy, which is part of the program of President John Lorenzo.
It's time for our entertainment segment, and joining us now is VOA Music Time in Africa host Heather Maxwell. Happy Friday, Heather.
Thank you, Esther. Happy Friday. Thanks. If you know anything about Mozambique, you've heard of marabenta. It's the iconic music and dance style of the whole country. Younger artists reinterpret it using modern instruments and instrumentation, production tools and techniques, and even new melodies and lyrics. But what is it? What is the original marabenta? I visited the source to find out, and 92-year-old Dilon Jinji lives in Marakwene, Mozambique, and he is the king.
I was born in August 14th, 1927.
I learned to play the guitar in 1937. I started playing marabenta at weddings. I used to play my guitar with the bridesmaids. So I played my guitar and the girls joined me to provide entertainment at the weddings. I made my guitar with an oil can.
And how many strings?
It was just 3 strings. I made my melody with those 3 strings. The first guitar that I played was my uncle's acoustic guitar. My older brother was a makwayela dancer, and he taught me how to dance. I danced so many other dances too. Shiparatuana, Shigubu, Shingomana. I learned all of those dances. I used to go everywhere with my older brother and we danced together. He taught me. A young sister also joined as the singer. She was always invited to all of the weddings as the lead singer. So all of the weddings she got invited to sing and dance. She always took Dylan Gingy. There was a young boy at Bokiso, another direction from Moamba, and the girls asked that young boy, "Who are you going to invite to entertain everyone at the wedding?" And the young guy said, "I'm going to invite Francisco Sibia." And then the girls said, "No, we want Marabenta." So the girls created the name, Marabenta.
I'm dancing with the king of Marabenta! Hey! Woo!
Thank you!
Yeah!
So what is Marabenta, the meaning of Marabenta?
Marabenta means to destroy.
Yo! Yo!
Who named him king of Marabenta?
It was another singer. His name is Fanim Fumo, another old Marabenta singer. Because there is no other man like me, who sings, dances, plays, and then all the girls when I was young. So all these things put together makes me the king.
What does he think about Marabenta music today?
Most people now still dance Marabenta. I'm very happy.
And that's our entertainment segment for today. Back to you, Esther.
Thank you so much, Heather. And that's our show for today. Be sure to watch Africa 54 on our website. From all of us here in Washington, have a great weekend.